Welcome back to our intimate conversational space. I'm Oliver, joined as always by Amelia. Today, we're venturing beyond conventional language drills to explore a profoundly human phenomenon, the subtle, unspectacular arrival of a long-held aspiration.
That's a rather introspective opening, Oliver. You're suggesting that not all victories announce themselves with trumpets and accolades.
Precisely. In our hyper-stimulated digital age, we are conditioned to expect dramatic climaxes. We envision slow-motion triumphs. But I'd argue that the most significant internal shifts often occur in the mundane intervals of our daily lives.
I find that deeply comforting. The notion that we don't need to be standing on a metaphorical mountain peak to have arrived at our destination. So, I have to ask, have you personally experienced this quiet manifestation?
That depends entirely on the depth of the question. Are we skimming the surface or are we diving into the existential depths?
Let's call it an introspective dive. I'm curious about the gap between our imagined success and the reality of achieving it.
Then yes, it happened just last month, ironically, in the most unglamorous of settings. I was seated at my desk surrounded by the debris of a long workday, cold coffee, scattered notes, and that particular exhaustion that settles in after deep concentration.
That sounds incredibly authentic. No cinematic lighting?
None whatsoever. But as I moved to shut down my laptop, a peculiar cognitive echo struck me. I was abruptly transported back to the version of myself from 5 years prior, the iteration of me that was paralyzed by the mere prospect of public articulation.
The visceral reaction? The physiological dread?
Exactly that. The tachycardia, the xerostomia, that debilitating dryness in the mouth, and the overwhelming sense that my cognitive faculties had abandoned me. I used to feel like a ghost inhabiting my own body when I tried to speak.
I know that dysphoria intimately. You feel like an imposter, and your voice sounds alien to your own ears.
For years, my ambition was merely to achieve spontaneous articulation, to convey my thoughts fluidly without the internal censor filtering every syllable. And sitting there in that mundane exhaustion, I realized that the fear had evaporated. I wasn't aware of the precise moment it left, I just realized it was gone.
So the breakthrough wasn't a fireworks display. It was a subtle recalibration of your internal thermostat. The anxiety just normalized.
Precisely. There was no external validation, no congratulatory applause. The silence was deafening, yet profoundly reassuring. It felt like a small, unassuming door had swung open inside my psyche, allowing the real me to step forward.
That metaphor resonates deeply, a small door opening. It suggests that the struggle itself is what gives the eventual peace its weight. If it had been easy, it wouldn't have felt so sacred.
Absolutely. The journey wasn't characterized by Herculean bravery. It was marked by incremental, often awkward repetitions. Sometimes I would record a single sentence, listen to the playback, cringe, and delete it immediately.
That raw vulnerability is often the crucible of growth. The listening back phase is brutally humbling. We are our own harshest critics, and our internal acoustics always distort our true sound.
Yet I kept returning, not with militant discipline, but with a stubborn, gentle persistence. At the time, it felt like treading water, but in retrospect, it was the very mechanism of my evolution.
That dismantles the myth of the overnight success. Persistence doesn't look heroic from the outside. It just looks like a tired person choosing to try one more time.
And that is precisely how my dream materialized, not through a sudden metamorphosis, but through the cumulative power of small, consistent returns to the same intention. Now, Amelia, I sense a parallel narrative brewing within you. You asked that question with the weight of personal experience. You see right through me. Yes, I harbored a quiet, persistent ambition to create something that cultivated a sense of belonging and emotional resonance. I wanted to foster a space where people felt understood, perhaps even validated.
A sanctuary of shared experience. That's a noble, albeit daunting endeavor.
For an extended period, it remained an ethereal concept, a beautiful abstraction in my mind. I possessed the ambition, but I was simultaneously terrified of the execution. The inner critic I harbored was incredibly vociferous, insisting on perfection as a prerequisite to action.
That inner monologue is often the primary impediment to actualization. We wait for the opportune moment, the ideal skill level, the cosmic alignment.
Exactly. I kept deferring it, thinking when I am more qualified, when I am more ready, until I grew exhausted by my own inertia. It wasn't a sudden surge of inspiration, it was a visceral fatigue with the state of inaction.
So you hit a critical threshold. What did you do?
I produced something ridiculously small, a recording less than 60 seconds long, and I detested it. My voice sounded inauthentic, my articulation stilted, my energy misaligned. It was profoundly humbling.
Yet you persisted. That sounds less like sheer determination and more like obstinate resilience, refusing to allow your own potential to languish in the shadows.
I think I just recited a mantra. Don't disappear from your own narrative. Don't let your own story remain unwritten. When did I actually feel it was real, though? It wasn't when I hit a numerical target or received a flood of praise.
It never is. What was the actual milestone then?
A single, unpretentious message from one person. They said, "This genuinely improved my day." I was utterly immobilized. I read it repeatedly, allowing the sentiment to saturate my consciousness. That was the milestone. Not the numbers, not the accolades, just one human soul connecting with my offering.
A quiet yet potent validation. That single sentence holds more weight than 1,000 impersonal likes. It becomes a North Star during times of doubt.
Yes, dreams in their nascent state often feel far-fetched and luminous, belonging to a parallel universe. We fantasize about the happily ever after, but when it actually occurs, life remains conspicuously mundane. The dishes are still piled up, the bills are still due, yet there's a subtle tectonic shift in your interior landscape. Something has fundamentally realigned.
That shift is the true treasure. I believe many learners experience this with language acquisition. At first, fluency seems like an unattainable summit. You watch native speakers with envy and self-doubt, but then a micro-victory occurs. You formulate a sentence without pre-translation. You understand a complex idiom. You leave a comment without hesitation.
And suddenly you realize a tiny fragment of that vast dream has become tangible. The struggle imbues the victory with profound meaning. If you were born fluent, it wouldn't be a milestone. It would just be breathing.
So true. The struggle gives the dream its inertia, its substance. When I finally achieved that internal peace, I felt a quiet pride, not the kind you boast about, but the kind that warms you from the inside.
I had a similar epiphany recently. While organizing, I stumbled upon an ancient notebook. It's always a risky endeavor, isn't it? The ghosts of our past selves.
Did you unearth a profound revelation or a cringeworthy regret?
The former, thankfully. I had written in my youthful handwriting, "I want to touch people's lives with my words." I had completely forgotten that raw, uncorrupted aspiration. Standing there, holding that page, I felt an overwhelming sense of continuity. I whispered to my past self, "You would be so proud of where we are."
That choked me up. Because we're so often chasing the next horizon, we fail to recognize that we are currently inhabiting an older dream we once thought impossible.
To anyone out there listening whose dream feels fast and distant, I urge you to start with the resources you possess today. Not the perfect version, not the studio microphone, not the elusive confidence, just your authentic self and a single step.
Do not disdain the humble beginnings, the first awkward attempt, the initial fumble, the day you almost capitulated but chose to persist. Those moments are the scaffolding upon which your success is constructed. Protect your ambition fiercely. Sometimes people will trivialize your vision because they're limited to seeing your current coordinates. They cannot perceive the internal growth curve.
So share your dreams sparingly with those who nourish your spirit rather than diminish it. and execute the work with quiet, relentless diligence, perhaps with a stimulant of your choice, be it coffee or tea.
A universally applicable wisdom. To add to that, a dream coming true is not merely the acquisition of a goal. It is about the transformation of the self. You become the individual who endured, who adapted, who persisted through the crucible of doubt. When the dream materializes, that evolved person arrives with it.
That is why it's so emotional. You aren't just happy about the outcome, you're honoring the arduous pilgrimage that brought you there. The trembling first step, the quiet practice sessions, the minor failures, and the decisive breakthrough where you silently whispered, "I am capable of this."
And perhaps that's the quintessential sentence we all need. I can do this, even if my voice wavers, even if it requires time, even if the world remains oblivious. Did it feel exactly as you had imagined, Amelia?
No, it felt different, more peaceful, less chaotic. It's as if my certain part of my psyche can finally rest. It's as if my heart is offering gratitude to my determination for not abandoning the journey. Quiet dreams can still revolutionize your existence, and minute steps can transport you to unforeseen places.
So, dear listener, if your dream remains in its embryonic stage, if you are still grappling with the messy middle, if you are still articulating one sentence at a time, please do not vanish from your own narrative. Protect it, nurture it, and one day, in an unassuming moment, you will look up and realize the threshold has been crossed.